thank you everyone for joining today. Excited to kick things off. Welcome to Closing Moves. We've got Brian LaManna joining. We're going to dig in shortly, but we're just going to give everyone another minute or two. And in the meantime, very, very brief intros. I'm Rory. I'm one of the co-founders here at Trumpet. We're a leading digital sales room platform. Fortunately, we're already working with Brian and the Gong team, but helping companies streamline their buying experience and surfacing never before seen insights. But today, we're going to dive into all things momentum when it comes to deals. Keeping deals hot between those meetings because we know things go dark, and it's going to be a good one. But whilst we're waiting, Brian, I'd love to hand it over to you because you've got quite an interesting background in terms of where you started your sales career and how you got to where you are today. But I don't take the thunder from you or the limelight. So I'd love to hear your story whilst everyone's joining.
Yeah, thanks so much first, Rory, for having us. We're huge fans of Trumpet over at Gong, and it's been amazing getting to use you all the last year across different deal rooms. I personally, I kind of stumbled into sales like a lot of other people probably. I went to college and I knew I wanted to do something business related. I wasn't sure like marketing or sports marketing or, it's probably just thinking along the lines of sports, but I actually stumbled into sales via an internship after my junior year, but I took an outside sales internship at a company called Anheuser-Busch, which here in the States owns Bud Light and about 210 other beer brands. And I actually had a really bad experience. I think I learned everything I didn't like about sales. It was no commission. It was all travel. I was doing a lot of like Excel spreadsheets and pricing and, stuff that didn't excite me quite as much. And at the time, I'd heard of other folks that were interning at these tech sales companies and putting up 120% of goal and making big commissions. And I think that's really what I needed to motivate myself and make sure I could put my best into the role every single day. So I got started at a company called Bright Edge. I was there for a little over 3 years. I was an SDR for a year back in 2018, an account executive for 2 years. And then I joined the Gong team in 2021 as a very entry-level account executive, level 1 small business, and have had the chance to work myself up at Gong over the past 4 years now, which feels crazy to say, but I just joined the enterprise team to start off 2025.
And I think the consistency in that, coming up to 10 years almost in the world of sales for yourself, but that consistency throughout, like President's Club, always hitting above 100%. I'm excited for the audience to hear just how the heck you do it on top of launching Closed One. I think, we've got to bring people up to speed on that because it's a lot of hard work on top of a very busy sales job. Do you want to kind of share a bit more about that?
Yeah, nothing will ever replace putting in the work at the end of the day as a seller or doing something outside of your full-time job as well. About 3 years ago, so I was a year into Gong. I saw other people at Gong that were very active on social media. Sarah Brazier at the time, Amit Bendoff, our CEO, Udi, our CMO, and I just started with like the curiosity of like, hey, what if I started sharing content once a week and sharing a little bit about my journey, just what was going well that week, what was not going well, when I screwed up on a deal, when I won a deal, different lessons. I figured even though I'd only been in sales for about 5 years at the time, there was likely somebody either still in college, like myself was, unsure what I wanted to do, or somebody maybe a couple years behind me in my journey that could learn in some way, shape, or form. So it started really small. I just started posting like once a week. It began accelerating from there and created a newsletter, created a website, created different like free content, free resources around things like objection handling and cold calling and discovery. And then more recently, I've started launching more like in-depth playbooks, think like 100-page PDF on like end-to-end discovery and all the different strategies and tactics one can use throughout a sales cycle.
Kudos. I know our team have benefited from it. And I think it's reflected in the organic engagement you get. Like people feel like they can really relate to the content. They can, it's actionable. And, I'm always sharing it with the team. And I think you got what now, over 100,000 followers. That doesn't happen for nothing. So you should feel proud, but also I'm sure there's a lot of sellers who've hit target thanks to you, closed the biggest deal of their life thanks to you. So do you ever take time to kind of think about that, maybe the impact you've had?
It's a great question. I think it is easy to, in the day to day, if you're kind of on the hamster wheel, just trying to survive from one call to the next or do stuff outside hours. I do though. Every weekend, I actually have a recurring task. I'm very systematized where I go through all of my LinkedIn DMs. I make sure I respond to every single person. I also take screenshots of like any really nice or kind messages. I just have a folder on my desktop that is kind of my reminder to myself. If I close a big deal or if I get a nice message, I put that as kind of my compilation. And everyone goes through it. If you've been in sales for more than 5 years and you've never had a bad quarter and never had a slump, I might not believe you. So when you do go through those tough times or lose a tough deal, it's fun to remind yourself like, hey, what we do is not that serious. We're not saving lives. We're not, doing what some very tough other difficult jobs involve and entail. And it's a good reminder to yourself on some of the impact you can have.
Yeah, and I think that's especially true. Am I right in saying when you first joined Gong, you lost 22 out of 23 opportunities in the early days? How did you get through that? Because that must have been stressful.
That is true. I lost 22 in my first 23, and the one I won, I deserve absolutely no credit. This was back in 2021 when inbounds would come in and they'd be like, "Hey, Brian, we want to buy Gong. We need 5 seats," and I was like, what do I do? Like I had my own freak out on the call. But yeah, like I think my goal in coming into any new role, and I've even taken this approach at Gong, like this year in enterprise, is like first step first, like admit like, hey, I'm the worst seller in my territory or at my company if I'm new to it, and that's okay, right? There's always a starting point. So it's okay. I suck. I'm the worst, but I want to get better. I want to grow that old, 1% better each and every day. And I want to come in with no ego, no attitude. My first thing was just like, hey, how can I learn from other top performers? I was fortunate enough to be at a company like Gong that I don't need to create my own playbook or reinvent the sales process. There's, the Rorys of the world putting up 200% a goal. And I want to be able to learn directly from them in terms of what they're doing that's finding so much success. That's really where I try to make my starting point. Over time, you'll make it Brian's. You'll put your own flair on it, your own touch. That natural evolution happens. But just coming in and trying to soak up as much from others, that's the best way to approach it.
Nice. I think that's reflective in your mindset, like for sellers to be the CEO of their own business, which I was taking a read on. Do you mind like sharing with the audience? Because I know whilst we're getting started here, and I can see some questions in the chat. It'd be good to hear, like having this consistent approach throughout your career, always hitting President's Club, always hitting quota, that mindset around being a CEO.
As a seller, you get a book of accounts, right? Or a territory. And I think the approach you want to take is first from like an identity and a mindset perspective of, hey, I'm the CEO of that territory, whether it's 50 accounts or 500 accounts. Like that's my book of business for the year. Maybe it's slightly better than everyone else's. Maybe it's slightly worse, but that's the hand I was dealt and like have some extreme ownership behind it. So that's really my approach of like, hey, I'm going to start the year. I'm going to really diligently go through, do my research, tier out those accounts, come up with a strategy, come up with a game plan, reverse engineer my own numbers in terms of like my daily inputs that I need to hit that end goal and that end outcome. So as an example, if I want to make President's Club, and for me, that involves hitting 150% of goal year to date, well, I need to do some math off that and say, hey, is that $2 million? Okay, great. What's our average deal size, right? If it's $250,000, that means I need 8 deals. What's my win rate? If my win rate's 25%, that means I need to work, 32% or 32 different opportunities over the course of the year. What does that mean for prospecting? What does that mean for daily activity? So that's kind of the mindset I take of like, I don't want to be reliant on someone else to be successful in my role as an individual contributor. I want to create a plan to that 150% of goal that's 100% within my control, where I'm not dependent on my SDR to have an amazing year or inbound to suddenly be hot. I want to create a plan via me going after my accounts, my territory, self-sourcing, and moving them through the funnel. And then the great news is if you execute on that plan and inbound does get hot or your pairing with your SDR works really well, that's all extra gravy per se.
Nice recipe for some magic. Sounds simple, but yeah, it really is when you put it into practice. But yeah, for everyone that's joined today, definitely check out Brian's LinkedIn if you haven't already, which I'm sure you have, but in particular, Close One. There's some great resources and information there where you can dive deeper. But we're going to bring everything back to today's topic. So creating momentum in between meetings. We're in a world where buyers are spending less time with us, buying committees are getting bigger, we can't get in front of every stakeholder. And if you think about it, like throughout the course of a deal, there are only so many times where we get, let's call this face-to-face even, it's online, where we really get face-to-face. And it's those, there's a few opportunities to wow them, to excite them, to get everyone on board across different departments, across different priorities, and a lot can change in a 3, a 6, a 12-month sales cycle. So with us spending less time in front of our buyers, kind of selling in between meetings, selling when we're not in the room, where would you start with that? Like, what are the kind of guiding principles that work for you in your sales motion to get to 200+%? I think I saw a 400% quota, which is insane. But yeah, where would you start?
Yeah, I'm personally the biggest believer in like those sell betweens or value touches between a meeting. Even before I used digital sales rooms, when I was at Bright Edge back in the day, I was ideating and thinking like, hey, what's that touch point I can send if today is making up Monday and my next meeting's not till Friday? Like, what can I do on Wednesday to advance that deal just a little bit, or like get them to think about Brian LaManna and my company and my product for like a minute in a positive light? Because while that deal to us might be my number one priority, I guarantee you, even if it's a focus for them, it's probably their 10th priority, maybe their 15th when it comes to everything else they're thinking about. So keep that framing in mind, that like that's the goal of those sell betweens and accelerating deals between the touch points, is that those are very busy people. And even if they don't click on the deal room, or even if they don't click on whatever you send, if they can think about that meeting upcoming in a positive light, that's a huge win for you and your evaluation. So for me, I use deal rooms now at the very start of my cycle, sometimes even before the first meeting, if not immediately after the first meeting. But I'm going to create out like a short digital sales room off of a couple different resources that I want to seed them with. For me, that's going to be like our integration with Salesforce. If they're on them for CRM, there's a short 90-second video we have that's like really powerful. That's like kind of hard to demo as well. Perfect thing to plan it with. We have Gong Collective, which is our like 250 different integrations. It's a huge differentiation point for us. I always include that. And I also include Forrester, who has their analysis on our competitive space. They rate Gong number one over different players. So I'm curating content specific for that person that obviously makes ourselves look good and will help drive the conversation forward. So after that very first call, I'll follow up and I'll say, hey, Rory, here's the recap, here's the next steps, and here's the digital sales room I built for us. Make sure to bookmark this. I included today's call, I included a Forrester case study, and I also included a short integration video that I referenced with Salesforce as an example. And then every single touch point, all I do is I link that same deal room over and over. I typically bold it. I typically put it in yellow highlighter as the background as well to make it really pop. Because I know if they open that and they're spending 5, 10, 15 minutes between calls, like they're going to come into that next conversation so much warmer. They're going to have a better perspective and they're going to start to sell themselves a little bit on the idea versus me having to do that in the subsequent conversation.
Nice. And have you, with that, seen the impact on the confidence for your champion, like being able to sell? Like there's this idea of like enabling our champion to sell when we're not in the room. And, often on the first call, it is one person we're speaking to and people instantly think the person that's put the call is the champion. We know it's not always the case. But how do you, like by equipping them with this, how do you then use that data to get in front of more stakeholders? So when you are creating these touch points and you're nurturing, it isn't just, hey, Brian, hey, Brian, hey, Brian. Like I'm going, hey, Brian, hey, me, hey, Udi, and everyone else. How do you get to that point?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the digital sales rooms will eventually become like more for your champion to sell internally than for you. One immediately came to mind that's been a big opportunity I've been working over the past couple of quarters, but my main point of contact over there, we'll call him Mike. He blows me up telling me what I need to be including in the digital room. asking for more resources, asking for the deck we walked through 3 calls ago, asking for the pricing sheet, and like holding me accountable to keeping it fully up to date because he's sharing it with all these different folks internally. With this opportunity in specific, we've had between 30 and 40 different stakeholders take part in different conversations at different points across revenue operations, sales leadership, sales management, the CRM admin team, security, legal. And he wants that as his source of truth to like orchestrate everyone internally. And a huge win that actually was uncovered as part of that was there was a new person that was constantly opening up the room. And of course, as the seller, I get all the analytics just pinged to my email. And I was like, who is, we'll call him Jeff, like, who is Jeff, like, continuing to open our room over and over and over? So I looked up Jeff's title, and he was the VP of data. For us at Gong, that's not a typical persona that we're selling to or that's very involved with. I actually brought that back to my main champion. I said, like, hey, like, Jeff keeps checking out the deal room. Like, I know you sent it to a bunch of people. Like, do you know any context for his interest or what sparked it? And he actually was looking at our integration with Snowflake and thinking about all the unstructured data that he could put in the data warehouse, how they could connect that to other data sources. I'll bore all the details, but we massively expanded the opportunity and have a whole different value engineering engagement and data cloud engagement that I would have otherwise never known existed. And I'm 100% confident that would not have expanded if something like Trumpet or a sales room was not being shared internally with them.
Nice. I'm glad we were able to help there. That's quite an interesting narrative.
Too.
And then with I bet, fingers crossed it comes over the line for you. And then like when you start getting notified that new people are entering a room and they're looking at different pieces of content, there's always this going around the champion, like how do we balance that? How have you found engaging those new stakeholders that you've never met?
Yeah, it's a tricky question. And I get asked this a lot as well. Like, do I go around my champion? Do I try to push my champion to mobilize and get these other people in the loop? I think my general thought process and 80-20 rule here is give your champion a chance to be a champion for you first. Like if I'm selling to Rory and he's all in about wanting Gong, well, he should want to introduce me to Jeff, the VP of data, and loop those other folks in. So why run the risk of like constantly going around that person, sending one-off emails? What I'll want to do is frame that to Rory and say, like, hey, Jeff has been checking out the room. What other customers have found super valuable is actually setting up one-to-one time to learn more about our data integrations and how we connect to Snowflake. I can loop in XYZ from the conversation on my side, who I think will be an amazing resource for that individual. Could you help us get us introduced? If not, I'm happy to reach out one-to-one. So you kind of give them the two options of, hey, do you want to introduce me or do you want me to reach out one-to-one? I think always give them a chance first. Once you have those conversations, right? Once I do have that call with Jeff, now I'm, single threading him. We're having separate dialogue where I'm not going back to my main champion every time and like asking for permission now that we have that relationship. But I think at the onset for like the first introduction, as much as possible, try to give your champion a chance to be a real champion for you.
Nice. Yeah, we've all seen that, testing the champion, qualifying the champion pretty much. And then, if you think about like how you're nurturing them with content, sometimes we've seen reps that, we've all been told like, just send a case study, send a white paper. And like, it's like touch points for the sake of touch points or CRM activity. How have you approached that? Like the way that you nurture these stakeholders differently with data from a deal room?
Great question. It's similar to my approach with like mutual success plans as an analogy. So even if in an enterprise cycle, there's typically 30 meetings that happen from start to finish. On a first call, I'm not going to show Rory my like A through Z roadmap to getting him to buy Gong. That's 30 steps. I want to give him like what's needed and then the next couple steps to seed his mind. I treat deal rooms the same exact ways. I don't want to overwhelm a couple stakeholders after we've had one or two calls. So I like to start with like 3 or 4 like core resources, like the ones I described. And then I like to continually add to that deal room and kind of have it be like a steady drip of new content, and thus, me getting new data and new insights as that evaluation goes on. So one of my favorite ways of using Trumpet is I have a template built out with, like, call it my 25 favorite resources, and I keep them all hidden or inactive. So when I create the template with Acme, what I do is I just turn on 3 of them. So Rory can see 3 of them. And then after the next call, I go back and I say, hey, Rory, I also added a case study and I added this video. In reality, I'm just turning them on, right? Hitting basically a light switch on the back end. So I have that like conglomerate of the top 25 things I could use, but then it makes it really easy for me to go back and kind of just flip on those switches throughout the cycle, so we can continue to kind of build them having a complete picture of everything we've talked about, as well as all the supporting resources and documentation.
Nice. And you mentioned mutual success plans there. Keyword success and mutual as well. And there's a lot of talk like, oh, they're just spreadsheets and they're just checklists and to-do lists for our buyers and no one engages, all that jazz. And like even like Trumpet or deal rooms aside, where they are digital, it sounds like you're able to use them effectively to create momentum. Like, what do you think that you do differently? What would be your recommendation to a seller who's like, I've never used one before? Like, where do I start? What could they do for me?
Yeah, I think start with like the why of like why you would want to leverage them. I think one is for your buyer to give them a little bit of a roadmap. It can be confusing. Like, we know how to sell our software. Buyers don't always know how to buy software, like what the typical evaluation process looks like. So I don't want to surprise Rory at the end of the call with asking for a tailored demo as a next step, or a reference call, or something that like he might not be expecting. The more I can seed that in the form of them seeing visually what the next steps are, as well as using that in an upfront contract to kick off the call, it's going to help me keep momentum at the end of my calls and like drive towards the ideal next step in my mind. And then I think for yourself as the buyer, it's going to help, or as the seller, excuse me, later stage, it's going to help you as well, kind of like work backwards off of what needs to be accomplished. I've always found like legal conversations and security and procurement, like asking all those questions, to be a little bit awkward. I don't know why, maybe it's just me. I like to share my screen and like show the mutual success plan and actually take notes and say, like, hey, Roy, would you mind spending a couple minutes here? Like, this will make sure it's as seamless as possible to go from this conversation today to hopefully getting Gong in your hands over the next couple of weeks. Can we spend 5 minutes chatting through, and I'll share my screen? What does legal typically entail? How about security? And I'll kind of make some notes as we go. So it feels like there's true mutual ownership of, hey, this isn't just like Brian's success plan to close the deal and earn money. This is our true mutual, keyword, success plan to get Gong in your hands.
I love that. Working backwards from them, going live, winning with the product, bringing it up on screen, being transparent about why it exists and it's for their benefit and not yours. I think that's a really, really good take. And are you using this across like the buying committee? So when you're getting told about new stakeholders, are you making them aware of it? Are you bringing their attention to it? Like, or is it purely something that you use with a champion?
I'm so glad you brought that up. I love using it with new stakeholders as well, especially before like really important presentations. And I use it as a way to show how much time and effort and dedication the team has already put into the evaluation. So it's a really great way to kind of seed. And, Rory's the CEO, he's joining the first call, and his team has already been on 10 or 15 calls over 6 months. Kick off the call and say like, hey, I just wanted to say thank you first for your team. There has been a ton of due diligence and thoughtful evaluation since February of 2025. Thus far, we've ran through 7 demos. We've ran 2 technical validations. The team has sat through a reference. Today's call is that executive demo, Rory, with yourself. And should today go well, boom, plant the seed of like the next 1 or 2 steps that have to take place. So I think it's a great way to give yourself credibility, but also remind your buyers of like how much time and effort they've put into this, and can almost help de-risk the chance that they just keep pushing, or that they want to be duplicative in terms of steps that have already been accomplished.
Yeah. And what do you think about like taking that and then coupling it with personalized messaging? When people hear personalization, they always think, oh, it's email outreach. But I'm sure that you and I can both agree personalization never stops throughout the progression of the deal, and that's across every stakeholder. So do you do anything when it's about like tailoring the messaging or the story, the narrative, the exec summary for procurement versus marketing versus RevOps? Like, I see a lot of reps just take generic content and treat it as one size fits all. And yeah, sure, everyone's going to care about this. And they just don't, because everyone in that business has different priorities, different reasons that they're involved in the evaluation. Yeah, talk to me about whether that's helped. Like, one, are you doing it? And two, is it helping with that momentum?
Yeah, it's a great question. For trumpet deal rooms in particular, I'm not like customizing the pages for different personas or like sections by person. Maybe I should. You're getting my brain going in terms of some different ways I could be leveraging it. Where I am leveraging personalization is like, I'll give you a real example. I reached out to I have a later stage deal and I haven't spoken with a couple of the sales managers. We did this big demo like 6 weeks ago where they're not the main decision makers, but I want to keep them in our corner. I want to make sure they're happy and continue to multi-thread. So I linked the deal room back as like a way to keep them in the loop on the evaluation. And I personalized that email message and like, hey, here's what we've accomplished since we last spoke 6 weeks ago. I also included this section specific for you all that I think you'd find valuable. That was our most recent demo and our go live plan that I know you all were not a part of. Like, so kind of calling out those sections that they should visit and go to as a way to just continue to drive momentum between the steps as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I think continuing to resurface it, make it that single source of truth for them, because that's what it essentially becomes. This evaluation, as you mentioned, can happen across 30 meetings. It can take months and months, and how you bring everything together into one link is a key way to create that momentum.
It's all about how you like position it and frame it as well. Like if you just throw it into one email or two emails over the evaluation and you get a couple opens and you're like, deal rooms aren't working for me. It's like, no shit, they're not working for you because you're not positioning them and discussing them in the right light. But when you mention at the end of the call, like, hey, Rory, in advance of next call, I'm going to build out this deal room between Gong and Acme to keep us all 100% aligned. I'm going to share our call today. I'm going to share that video that you were asking about. And I'm going to share one other resource that I think could be super valuable as you think about socializing this with your CRO. Go ahead and bookmark that. I will keep that organized throughout the cycle and it'll be super valuable for you all. They're going to leverage it. They're going to use it. So it's like really framing and positioning it as like that source of truth and that you are going to put the time and investment into it. And then use it in every follow-up email. Put it in bold, put it in yellow highlighter. Like that's how you get the adoption. Once they open it once, you'll see that they'll continue to go back to it over and over and over. It's really just getting them into it for the first time.
Yeah, especially if you're nurturing it. So it's continuing to evolve because there's an incentive for them to keep coming back to it rather than just like dump everything from that first call. That's not a well-run process. And if we put deal rooms aside for a second, when you think about keeping the conversation going, do you get people on texting terms like your champion? Are you doing any exec alignment whilst engaging with your champion? Like what else are you doing that you think is working effectively to keep that conversation going when the next meeting could be in, let's say, 4 weeks?
Great question. I think what Trumpet helps me with is the external piece of keeping everyone aligned from the buyer side, their own committee, and then between like myself and the evaluation. What I use internally that I love is just like Slack deal rooms where I'll create out different channels. So if I'm selling to Acme, I'll put in my sales manager and my sales engineer to start. And then as the opportunity grows and I'm looping in our legal team and security and my second line sales leader and my VP of sales, everybody gets added to that channel. I always pin a couple things up top. I pin the mutual success plan. I pin the Trumpet deal room as a whole. I'll pin any slide deck that we visited. And the goal is to get the entire internal team all swimming and rowing in the same direction. Why I find that really helpful is I'll continually update them maybe weekly on like, hey, here's what we've accomplished. Here's what we're driving towards. And I want them to challenge me about like, hey, I know there's that demo next Thursday. Why have we not thought about going on site for it? Or I see the agenda for next Friday. Like, I don't think that should be the next step here. I'm not saying I will always 100% agree with, what those takes are, but I do want to be challenged in terms of how I'm thinking about it. And oftentimes I'll completely pivot. So it's really helpful to have multiple people's perspectives through it. So that's a big piece. And then I'd say like one-to-one with your champion is the other. Getting on a texting basis is a non-negotiable. I feel like as a part of every sales cycle or every evaluation, you should be on a texting basis at some given point. Um, and not just texting them, like asking for deal updates or like what happened from that meeting. Like get to know them actually on like a human level. Like if they had weekend plans or it was their son's first birthday on Sunday, like shoot them a GIF on Sunday or a meme. Like do fun things like that and treat them like more than just your prospect and a piece of your deal.
Nice. You're doing a lot, putting in the groundwork for all of these deals because, as we know, enterprise sales, it's a tough one. You've got to stick it through. But the kind of final question before we wrap up here, and I appreciate all the questions in the channel. Team are getting back, and we'll definitely connect. Brian and myself with all of you after, is I know that you've previously spoken about eliminating no decision risk. So when you think of this creating momentum, keeping the conversation going, how do you tie that back to no decision, which we know is like the biggest reason deals fall through?
Definitely is. To me, no decision, it comes back to discovery and it comes back to understanding a true top priority for that company and being able to attach your solution to it. So, easier said than done here, but you want to be able to uncover that number one priority. And a number one priority, hopefully everyone has the gist of what Gong does that's on the webinar today, but like the number one priority is not like getting better revenue software or like coaching. Like that is very, very surface level. When I say number one priority, I mean like put your solution completely aside. Like what is the CEO, CRO, CTO, what are they speaking about in the boardroom that are like, hey, these are the three key strategic priorities or objectives we have to hit this year to hit or exceed our number, that have nothing to do with your solution, that are their existing priorities that exist without you. That's what you want to help uncover. For me, how I go about uncovering that, I try to come into those first calls with a really sharp point of view. I don't just ask, hey, Rory, what are your top 2 to 3 priorities? I reference really specific observations, like just make up, hey, I saw the team just launched a new product in mutual success plans, and I saw the team just expanded into Dublin for the first time. Like I'd imagine XYZ is most top of mind with you. And I want to continue to peel back and understand, hey, maybe those two things aren't your top priority, but like tell me what trumps that as an even bigger focus for you now through end of 2025 here. And then continue to revisit that in every conversation. Ask tough questions as well. Like, hey, Rory, we keep discussing the mutual success plan product. It seems like that's a huge focus, a huge initiative. Talk to me. Like, if we haven't improved sales for that in the next 90 days, is that okay? Or is that something we wanted solved yesterday? And it'll be really telling from those answers of like, oh, it's a big priority, but like 90 days, like that'd be totally fine. That allows you to once again go in and ask the tough questions like, great, like what trumps mutual success plans then is a bigger priority that you need to solve for in the next 2 to 3 months. So it all comes back to discovery. It comes down to asking hard questions, coming in with a point of view, doing your research, and continuing to build on discovery call after call. You're not going to always uncover those things in the first conversation or the second. You got to build on them and continue to kind of layer and filter down.
Nice. Ending with some absolute gold. And with that, I'm going to put you on the spot here. You weren't expecting this one, but in the next kind of 6 to 12 months, the world of sales is changing so fast. You might not have an answer for all of these, but if you think of the future ahead, what are you going to stop doing? What are you going to start doing? And what are you going to continue doing in your own kind of book of business?
Start, stop, continue. And for the record, I wasn't prepared for any of these. I didn't get any pre-call questions.
Yeah, kudos to us.
the way I like it, but it's a great question. I think a lot of it's continuing to do what's made 2025 successful and not successful. So like I really have not found any success anymore with like generic sequences or like for my tier 3, which are my lower accounts, like putting them through a automated sequence to get some touch points out, I don't think I've landed like a single opportunity through like zero personalization messaging. So like for me, that's just a waste of time if I'm spending 5, 10, 15 hours a year like building those sequences and sending that out. Like I should stop investing in that. What has been working super well for me is like anything hyper personalized that couldn't be done with AI. So things like LinkedIn voice notes have been very successful. I haven't seen AI take a stab at those yet. Gifting has been very successful for us. Team links, meaning like warm introductions, have probably been the highest success rate. So if I'm prospecting Rory, does anyone at Gong know Rory? And like before I just put Rory into a sequence, like reach out to the 3 people internally and be like, hey, I saw you have a first degree connection. Like, is it random or like any chance you know them that you could intro? Like a 2-on-1 email or a 2-on-1 LinkedIn message has been super effective. And then I'll say in terms of like continue on sites, like in-person presentations have been wildly successful, events, getting on a texting basis. I guess the theme is like, as everyone's going more towards like AI and automation, like when they zig, you zag, and the zagging has been very successful.
Love that. Kind of just doing the basics well, being consistent with them, and a big fan of on-site. We have it as like a kind of qualification criteria for deals getting to late stage. Like if we've not at least offered or tried, that's where the best partnerships are made, the best customers for life, because people buy from people. Let's not forget that. But anyway, let's wrap up here. Brian, been a pleasure. I've made notes. I've learned a ton. And congrats again on all you've achieved, and wishing you continued success and at Gong and beyond. And thank you on behalf of the sales community for you sharing all of your experience, the wins, the losses. I think everyone's super grateful. And thank you again for joining today.
Yeah, thanks everyone for making the time investment, and thanks so much, Rory, for having me.
Cheers.